Well, with the United States and Mexico, they entered into a free trade partnership in the middle of the 1990s. Now, what happened was that it destroyed agriculture in Mexico because they couldn't compete with the subsidized food products coming from the United States. Now, this in turn destroyed, again, all of these farming communities, which then led to a massive out-migration from Mexico to the United States. Now, I'm not saying that this necessarily will be repeated with Ukraine and the European Union, but I am suggesting that there is a very real danger and needs to be looked at very carefully. You know, in the past, the European Union was quite interested in integrating Turkey into the EU for a lot of reasons. You know, again, having to do with transit corridors, having a buffer against possible Islamic radical movements. There were a lot of reasons that the EU wanted to include Turkey. But of course, people within the European Union were less favorable to this idea. So in short, racism was a significant factor in terms of turning public opinion within the European Union against inclusion of Turkey. But I think the point is more or less moot now. I think Turkey is not so interested, frankly, anymore in joining the European Union. So I don't think it's an issue anymore, frankly. It would be better for them if they were looking at this from the perspective of their national interest. And actually, again, just to be quite direct, playing Russia and the European Union off of each other to get the best deal that they could. But I think instead, of course, it's a very emotional issue. And of course, it's one that's very linked to politics. And so it's not being engaged from a perspective of the national interest and of rationality. So in effect, they could end up losing out on getting a much better deal than they otherwise would if they were looking at this more pragmatically, more rationally. Well, anything is possible. You know, it's difficult to say how that would play out in practice. As we know, communities typically are not so evenly split, and whereas we do have an east-west division within Ukraine, you know, where do you draw those borders, and how do you deal with populations that would be left behind a border? So, such a split could be very messy. I mean, it could be a kind of a Balkans-like situation, and of course, those kinds of situations are always ones that you want to avoid. But that does not make it impossible.